Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. We're still populating our new office. A couple of us are working on boxes, but that's the way it is. We've uploaded Mindspeak with the Cabinet Secretary, Henry Rotich. We'll also be uploading the Q&A in a bit. Do have a look at that. Very interesting session where he delved in detail with each item. Macro thoughts go back to what I wrote on February the 1st. George Soros, Esquire, is going to make another killing and is set to skin the Bank of China. George Soros, the man who broke the Bank of England, and I just reached the trading floor at Credit Suisse First Boston and watched this unfold in real time in front of my eyes. I actually sat next to the proprietary trading desk. And I watched this gentleman make about $30 or $40 million, which was about 5 or 6 times his budget in that one day. What happened? Lamont put up interest rates in the morning, put them up again in the afternoon, and this fellow on my left was lending money in billions of dollars at these rates. By the evening, the rates were lower, and he'd closed out his position the next day. Soros's war on the renminbi and the Hong Kong dollar cannot possibly succeed. About this, there can be no doubt. Read a front-page opinion piece in the overseas edition of the People's Daily, headlined "Declaring War on China's Currency, Ha Ha." The problem is this, and I think he's going to make another killing. Grand macroeconomic elephant in the room is what happens if China is forced into a major one-off devaluation in retaliation. Markets are unlikely to react well to a big yuan devaluation, and the further the ECB and the BOJ force their currencies down, the more they push China to act. And I think it's now inevitable that China will act. And early this morning I saw a tweet from Zero Hedge, US dollar renminbi buying in past hour led by North American banks helped trigger buy stop losses, haha. And it took me back to September 2014 when I wrote a piece about the dollar, and I was describing Stanley Druckenmiller, who was George Soros's partner, bet the bank against the Bank of England on September 16, 1992, and made off with £1 billion. In the days when $1 billion was a serious amount of stash. And he said this: as a macro investor, my job for 30 years was to anticipate changes in the economic trends that were not expected by others and therefore not yet reflected in securities prices. And I think we've really got to think through a 10% renminbi devaluation now. Yesterday evening, I had a very enjoyable evening with some photographers, really accomplished ones, on the rooftop at my old office in Peshawar, and let me put up a couple of photographs that my daughter took of them taking some photographs, and I'll show you photographs over the next few podcasts. I love this photograph from the Amboseli, Convergence of the Tribes by Marie Wilkinson and Cyril Christo. Isn't it a beautiful photograph of cohabitation, coexistence? I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. Mark Twain, him again. Keep away from people who try to belittle your ambitions. Small people always do that. But the really great make you feel that you too can become great. Don't part with your illusions. When they are gone, you may still exist, but you have ceased to live. Mark Twain. Let me put up a photograph from The Guardian. This was a little while ago. Aleppo, Syria. Hell on earth by May Soon. It seems the Syrian army now is on the brink of taking Aleppo back. I'll put up a photograph of Putin and Assad and say this: given that this was a manufactured rebellion and that the rebels are mercenaries, wouldn't you just string it along if you were Putin and Assad and wipe the floor once and for all? Otherwise, these folks are going to regroup and be parachuted into Grozny or Xinjiang or somewhere else. 5th of October 2015, when Putin made his Syrian intervention, I said he's a geopolitical grandmaster. And you remember what he said in Unga. I cannot help asking those who have caused the situation, do you realize now what you've done? And Akin said that Putin fancies himself the flycatcher and Syria the flytrap. The speed of execution confirms that Russia is once again a geopolitical actor that will have to be considered. And said it is a breathtaking rebound. I concluded by saying President Obama is now probably considering how he can wrestle the oil price to $20 because that would be a terminal hit. Interesting piece in the New Yorker about Putin's dragon is the ruler of Chechnya out of control. The center of Grozny, the capital of the Russian Republic of Chechnya, is unrecognizable to anyone who saw it during the country's two most recent wars against Russia. The first Chechen War, which began in 1994, was a war of nationalist resistance. Chechnya declared independence from Russia when the Soviet Union disintegrated and ended 2 years later after a Russian bombing campaign killed thousands of civilians and left the city in ruins. The Second Chechen War, which the Russians launched in 1999, and it's widely felt to help Vladimir Putin win that election, in an effort to curb not only Chechen separatism, but the threat of militant Islam, wound down a decade later. Let me put up a photograph from November 1995. Executions, prospect poverty in Grozny, November 1995. And then in the same article that I was referring to from the New Yorker, there's a sentence, inside the hall, a troop of Chechen women in flowing red dresses performed a traditional dance that was lyrical, almost mournful. And then from August 1995, this photograph by Thomas Dvorak, Chechens celebrating the peace. Analyzing the current situation, she criticized the former army because of a crazy mix of anarchists who decided to wage war on a principle, I fight for whoever pays me more. That's Aisha Gaddafi. Zika viruses in Australia, 2 cases of infection have been discovered in New South Wales. Dallas officials have confirmed on Tuesday the first case of Zika virus in the US being transmitted locally via sexual intercourse. It takes me back when I was writing about the Ebola virus when I said it is not about the absolute number of cases, it's about its escape velocity. Viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. International markets, I went back to the article I wrote towards the beginning of the year, and I said then, a start to the year that goes back decades. I said, I, like Lefebvre, have watched the markets for eternity, and I've never seen anything like this, and that's saying something, because I can remember 1994, 1998, and those were big, seismic events. Jamie McGeever, US 10-year yield falls below 1.9%, lowest since last April and down 40 basis points since the Fed's rate hike on December the 16th. Let's move on to currency markets. The euro is at 109.21, dollar index 98.87, Japanese yen back below 120, 119.57. I still am bullish. The yen, notwithstanding Corona going kamikaze on us. Swissy 101.81, the pound, that's sort of started to find its footing, 144.13. Let's keep an eye on that. I was very bearish a while back, but let's see what develops from here. The Aussie 0.7024, India rupee 68.195. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a record low. South Korean won 1218.63, the Rial 398.71, Egyptian pound 782, and the Rand 1630. I was bearish around, selling it with a 15 handle turned out to be a good decision. Let me put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index, and we've got to keep an eye on things because of that risk of the Chinese devaluation. Dollar yen 5-day chart, fading Kuroda's negative interest rate policy. We're back now at 119.56, and I'll stay bullish the yen, but we've got to bear in mind Kuroda's going to come and hit us again. Commodity markets, gold, let me put up a 6-month chart, 1128. This could go crazy to the upside in point of fact. If the Chinese devalue, and that looks like a shoe-in. Oil back below $30 a barrel. Let me put up an image from Bloomberg, and I'll put also a chart, a longer-term chart from Eno. And I think we're going to retest the lows again, I'm afraid. Let's move on to Africa. The newly elected AU chairman, Chadian President Idris Deby. This is a photograph from Zinua. And of course, Africa Union's hot air as it backpedals on Burundi. Nkurunziza pulls off a deadly diplomatic victory. That's the Mail and Guardian, and indeed he has. And then saying, which I thought was very clever, when the dust settles, it will be the small geopolitical lightweight of Burundi that eventually showed up the soft underbelly of the African Union, the continent's 54-member bloc. Interesting article in the FT about Angola. Angola's central bank has pledged to tighten financial regulations, step up anti-money laundering measures after 2 international banks halted US dollar supplies to the southern African nation. That's Bank of America and Standard Chartered. José Pedro de Moraes, governor of the National Bank of Angola, told the FT that the central bank had conducted a fundamental revision of its regulatory framework. Said dollar availability was a concern, but insisted that Angola had sufficient foreign reserves and external financing, much of it from China, to last out the economic downturn triggered by the slump in oil prices. By the end of 2015, gross foreign reserves fell roughly from 32 billion in 2013 to 22 billion, equivalent to about 7 months of imports. And there's a lot of there are quite a few doubts around some of these numbers, particularly Nigeria and Angola. The government slashed the budget in response to oil prices. The Kwanza, which is 156 to the dollar in the official market, is trading around 400 on the unofficial market, which tells you exactly how big the problem is. The government is rationing the supply of dollars to the system, Mr. de Moraes said, to manage the tight liquidity. I wrote on the 11th of January that there are clearly winners and losers in Africa. Angola is one of the losers. The big elephants in the room, Nigeria and South Africa, which together make up considerably more than 50% of sub-Saharan African GDP, are getting mauled. I spoke of how Madame Lagarde went to visit Lagos to try her elegant best to cajole President Buhari into devaluing the currency. I said a 20 to 25% devaluation of the Naira is predicted and predictable. And I was also then talking about South Africa and saying that, in a situation I could see that going back to about 20. And then I said there's no Hail Mary pass coming from commodity producers from Abuja to Luanda, from Lusaka to Johannesburg. The denouement is still ahead of us, and the risks of a disorderly breakdown are spiking, just like the Chicago Board of Exchange Volatility Index. I like this photograph of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip with Emperor Haile Selassie. That was from 1965, the year I was born. Then, interesting article in Open Democracy about unrest in Ethiopia, the ultimate warning shot. Tigray People's Liberation Front, the strongest component of the ruling coalition from the middle of 2014, has faced the highest level of Tigrayan popular discontent since its inception 40 years ago. That came first. Now the unrest in the most populated region of Ethiopia has sent to the regime as a whole the most shattering warning shot since its arrival in power in 1991. Tigray is marginal when you look at the geography and population, 6% of Ethiopians. The TPLF had the strength to impose its hegemony after its victory of the dead military socialist junta in 1991. Dominance has recently declined, remains the driving force of the coalition between the four ethnic forces constituting the near single party. And that's why that situation is so dangerous in Addis Ababa. South Africa's rich splurge on luxury yachts. He described Cape Town as the luxury doorway to Africa. He said that he'd sold a string of multi-million rand sports fishing boats and yachts to buyers in Kenya, Angola, Uganda, and even Syria. World Bank sees South Africa's economy growing at 0.8% this year. That's a downshift from 1.4%. I think it will be zero. The South African all shares down 5.26% this year, fell sharply yesterday, 2.09%, as the ratings agencies put the banks on notice. Dollar rand, 16.30. I think you continue to sell it with a 15 handle, which worked a treat. The Egyptian EGX30 rallied 1.73% yesterday. It's down 14.23% year to date. Nigerian all share down 16.78% year to date, and it's going to continue falling. The Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 0.37% year to date. Moving on to Kenya, we are 65% done with taking a carbon market live in Kenya, and are now looking to draft rules and the legal framework for the board. Goods forward step. Kenya, of course, has been selling its credits through the World Bank's emission reduction purchase agreements. Mumi has also entered into a similar agreement with Japan Carbon Finance Limited in 2009. EABL, we're going to invest a lot in growing in Rwanda, Burundi, and Eastern DRC. This is Charles Island. Company on Thursday posted a 67% increase in first half profit, witness growth of 30% in Rwanda from a very small base. We're going to more than double the number of employees and triple advertising spending in Rwanda, Island said. DRC has good market prospects, companies working on a strategy to tap into that market. EABL, of course, released first half results, which was strong, revenue up 8.241%. What was interesting though is Tusker was an underperformer, Kenya was an outperformer, and really what you saw was the fruits of a shift lower into a lower price range, and obviously that worked out well. Kenya shilling 102.36 last, Nairobi all shares down 4.15%, but bounced 1.17% yesterday, making that a 2.075% move higher this week. NSE 20 down 6.42%. So far, market more constructive yesterday. Let's see if we can see some follow through now. Once again, thank you for stopping by.